Hey everybody, welcome into the Volquest Mailbag Podcast here on this Thursday morning. I'm Eric Kane, Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs. As you listen, wherever you get your podcasts here at VolQuest.com or on the VolQuest YouTube channel, you're probably watching it. If so, hit this like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tons of questions to get into. We'll go ahead and start. This is from Nashville Vol 615. When do you think we're going to see Heupel get a salary increase? Also, what range do you see his salary going to, Brent Hubbs?
I don't think they're going to wait until the spring. I don't think they're going to wait until September like they did this past year. So I think it's going to come sooner rather than later. And I think he's going to go somewhere between $8 and $9 million, given where the market is right now. I mean, am I wrong? Doesn't he have to go into that range?
I think he's got to go 7.5 at least.
If Lane Kiffin's making $9 million, why is Josh Heupel not making $9 million?
Exactly. I think he's 8 to 9. Now it may be 9 like in year 3, but I think he's going to be between 8 and 9 with this new deal.
He's only making what on this current deal? What, 5?
Do you say right? Only? You see only $5 million?
Compared to everybody else, I mean, he's one of the fourth. Poorest coaches in the SEC right now.
Guys, Eli Drinkowitz is making over $6 million.
Yeah,
what a world!
Josh Heupel needs to be between 8 and 9. At least
he's making Eric Kane money currently. He'll eventually get to Matt Ray money.
Okay, yeah. If either one of us ever saw that type of money, yeah, we'd be set. T-Many, are there any more rumors about Tennessee coaches leaving for other jobs, mostly assistants or analysts?
As of now, no. I mean, I don't think anybody is positioned to leave. I don't think anyone is fielding any type of offers as of right now, and it feels like things have kind of settled. So it could just be the one move of Golish to South Florida, and Tennessee hires a tight ends coach.
Rob, I think there's two things you got to keep in mind with the timing on the stuff. You just had your turnover in the NFL. Is there an assistant coach who wants to get out of the rat race because of the recruiting calendar? And then is there a domino effect if Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan for the NFL? I think those are kind of the only two things hanging out there right now that could pop up, because I think AP's right, Rob, in that this staff seems seems content where they are right now. Mute.
I was going to say, unlike, do we have to go back to Phillip? Since you had a guy that you felt like most assistants were content to work for? I mean, it wasn't, rats off a scrambled ship the first chance they got. I don't know. I mean, Butch brought a bunch of his own guys. I mean, once he started bringing other people in, I think they looked around and were like, ooh, I think I might want to get out of here. But, I mean, I just think, at AP, what's your all-time assistant coach comment? John Palermo.
Oh, you know that cabin in Crossville, baby. It wasn't Pat Dye's cabin. It was just John Palermo's cabin.
John Palermo's cabin. But seriously, I mean, it just feels like, it's a good work environment that people, unless you're going to move up like Alex did, it doesn't seem like guys are just looking to get out. I mean, you saw the wide receiver coach, go to the NFL last year, which just about anybody will jump if they can and get out of recruiting and still cash those checks. So, I mean, I think if you get to this point of the year, unless, like Brett was talking about, there's a Harbaugh type move, and which sends out ripple effects. I mean, it seems like if you get to here in January, you're probably set.
Hubbs brings up a good point, Rob. Harbaugh could have a potential, ripple effect if he were to leave, because depending on who Michigan hired, would they look at a Tim Banks potentially to run the defense up there with the fact that he's from Detroit? Now, again, you're just kind of trying to connect dots at this point. I mean, nothing says anyone is leaving. But just looking at, a potential fallout, that'd probably be about the only thing. So I don't disagree with what Hubbard says there. It just still feels like everybody's really happy with wives are happy, kids are happy. And that goes a long way to coaches staying.
No doubt about that. 100%. The family aspect of it, Eric, those guys staying happy is important. And this is a good place this is a good town to raise your family in, particularly when you go 10 wins or 11 wins.
11.
It's a fun town to raise your kids in when when you've won 11 games in a season.
DMV Vol 1985. This looks like a good Rob Lewis question. Could this 2023 team have 1998 chemistry vibes? Star power leaving, but veteran quarterback taking over who lacks respect, with a veteran defense and great running game.
I mean, they might have some of those vibes, but Al Wilson's not walking through that door. Sean Ellis, I don't think is walking through that door. So, I think they're going to have good chemistry, but, I don't know how many college football Hall of Famers are on this team, or second round draft picks at wide receiver like Peerless Price or Travis Henry. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some good chemistry and good vibes, and I think, small sample size. I think that's always going to be the case with Josh Heupel's teams, or most years. But yeah, that 98 team had a lot more going for it than good vibes.
Yeah, I get what he's saying, Austin. I mean, obviously, you lose your quarterback, you lose some star power on offense. I know he's not comparing this defense to 98's defense, but you do have a veteran defense coming back. I get what he's saying, but in terms of there's no one on that side of the defensive ball that even comes close to like an Al Wilson. I know he's not saying that, but it's just there are some similar similarities, I guess, similarities than 98 to what's about to happen in 23.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's always compares everything to 98. But, why can't it be comparable to 1990 Hubbard? And Tennessee won at 89. They won at 90. Why not, back-to-back years? I mean, not everything has to be compared to to Tennessee's low national championship in the last 65 years. I mean, it can be compared to other great years, and there have been other great years. So, I do think that there's a level of there's a level of I guess slight that the next year's group is going to feel. I think they're not going to be ranked as high as many people believe they'll be ranked. In my opinion, a lot of people are going to doubt Joe Milton. I think that plays into Tennessee's hands. It plays into Josh Heupel's hands. I wouldn't want to be ranked real high if I was Josh Heupel. I'd want to kind of lay under the radar.
Yeah, here's the thing, too, about the 98 season, and this is in no way an indictment on Peyton Manning in any way, shape, or form. That 98 team had a real chip on their shoulder because they felt like it was in 97, it was Peyton Manning, and it was all about Peyton Manning, and they had a chip on their shoulder to prove that they were a program, not a one-trick guy. Because Peyton, he'd been on Sports Illustrated, he was on every talk show. He was, when national people came to town, they didn't want to talk to anybody else but Peyton Manning, right? I mean, we talk about Al Wilson in 98. Nobody talked about Al Wilson in 97, right? I mean, he was like, it was almost like he wasn't on the team in that way. So if you talk to a lot of those members of the 98 team, the first thing they're going to tell you is how much respect they have for Peyton Manning and how much they realize everything he did for the program. But they'll also quickly tell you in the next sentence, we wanted to prove to everybody we were more than the Peyton Manning football team. We were the Tennessee football team. And that was part of their driving deal. I don't think you have that same type of mentality going this way. The other thing too, Austin, you've had this conversation with Fred White and others. When they got embarrassed by Nebraska physically in that Orange Bowl, everything changed for them in the offseason too. How they went about their business, how they went about things was very different. So they had a different set of catalysts to kind of carry them in 98, which is why I don't think you can make a great comparison of this team to, and Austin, you're right. Everything can't be compared to 98. I don't think there's a ton of similarities that way to answer the poster's question.
Swagger 12, maybe a silly question, but if Jerry Stackhouse were to get fired, any chance he could end up on Barnes' staff, Rob Lewis?
No.
Jerry get a job. I mean, Jerry's not a bad basketball coach.
Jerry also has probably $100 million in the bank. He's not going to be an assistant for anybody.
Well, he points out that money's not an issue for him, likely. But I mean,
when money's not an issue, that translates in most cases that you're not going to be the assistant coach in any sport.
What's more fun for fans to debate? Like that somebody just wants to come here and be Rick Barnes' assistant, or that Eric Berry should have paid for Evan and Elliott's scholarship to free up 2 more for the boys back in the day.
Well, and also is I'm surprised that it was Joey Halsley and not Peyton Manning that was the offensive coordinator hire for Josh.
Hitter wants to know what's the latest on SEC realignment. Has there been any more talk on when that will go into effect and/or the common annual opponents, who that would be for Tennessee, Brent Hubbs?
It's going to be, I think, the 6-3 deal, where you're going to have the 3 common opponents every year. I think for Tennessee, that's probably going to be Alabama, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky. That's what a lot of people think. I'm more in favor of the 7-2 deal because I think that there's a lot of teams in this league that don't have 3 rival games that make sense. I think you could do it with 2 rival games and make that better. But I think they're going to end up 6-3. And I think
7-2 wasn't an option, was it?
No, it's not been an option. That's just that's my personal thing. I mean,
Hubbs is creating it.
Well, I mean, let's say Texas comes in, right? It would be natural for Texas to play Oklahoma and Texas A&M.
Yep.
Who's their third natural rival?
They go probably lump LSU or Arkansas. Arkansas probably.
Okay.
But then, how many? I mean, Arkansas. How many rivals does Arkansas have? I mean, right? I mean, they could have a bunch because they've had SEC rivals and the old SWAC rivals.
Right. And look at South Carolina. Who would be the 3 common opponents for South Carolina that makes sense?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so I like the 7-2 because I think that there's enough you would maintain and protect all of your long-standing rivals with 2 traditional, repeat games every year, and then you rotate more. And I think rotation, I'm in favor of rotating more, but that's just my opinion. I think it's going to go 6-3 to answer the guy's question, and I think it's going to be in 24 when it comes about, because Chris Lowe has said this on The Nation, Austin. I think it's the best point that's made out there. If you're the Big 12, you're not going to just let that contract with Oklahoma and Texas expire, right? Let them get out of it a year early and let them pay you some money. Get some money for them departing. Don't just let it go to the very end, right? And lose your equity where they can just walk scot-free. I think you take the cash in 24, and that's going to be more money than you make by having them in your league one more year. So I think it's going to happen in 24.
Yeah, I mean, 6-3. Either way, if Tennessee ends up with Alabama and Vanderbilt and Kentucky, the fact that they are getting away from Georgia year in, year out, as Georgia starts to really become such a dominant program, like, I think that's great for Tennessee. Again, I'm not saying, I mean, you have Alabama's still Alabama. They're still going to be really good as long as Nick's there. But the fact is Tennessee's played Alabama and Georgia every year, and those 2 teams have, so really since 17, since Georgia first went to the championship game, they've been on par with each other every year basically. And you're playing 2 of the top 5 teams in college football every year, plus a Florida, plus a sprinkling of a A&M or an LSU or whoever else, or Auburn, whoever else in the West. Like, I get you're going to have a tough schedule in this league, but if you don't have to play Georgia every year, that's a win in my book.
2024, you could potentially see that, a 16-team SEC with 3 common opponents. You could also see a 12-team, college football playoff. I mean, 2024 is shaping up to be a pretty big season, changing the guard, if you will. Go Balls 365. Did we miss on any players we actually wanted? I would assume from the portal players. Tennessee missed on any portal players they actually wanted, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple that they would have loved to have got to campus or whatever, but no one that's been here, does it feel like that they've just been like, I mean, we missed on that one. They've tried to get in play with some players, and it just hasn't happened. Like, that's to me not missing, because if to me, missing is when you actually engage with the kid.
Jared Verse.
Kid engages back. Exactly. Kid engages back. And then it's, then you're to put this in Top Gun terms, you're in a dogfight, with another program for said player. If a kid doesn't, like last year when they called, running back from Georgia Tech went to Alabama.
Jahmyr
Gibbs. He never reciprocated. He had no interest in coming up here. And so, like, to me, Tennessee never had a shot at him. So as far as this year, no, nobody, the Tennessee chose not to really push hard for the Rhode Island tackle. They didn't go after Devin Sears, the kid from Texas State, real hard. So I mean, like, yeah, they've brought a few to campus, but that don't mean they went after them.
Complete sidebar here, Brent. Just quickly, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Are you surprised Jared Verse is not going to the draft? I mean, he's a first-round projected draft pick, and he's staying at FSU for another year.
Yeah, I am surprised. I mean, in visiting with Jared, he's a smart kid, bright kid, got a great future, and obviously he's enjoyed the college experience. I'm sure life at Florida State was a lot different this past year than his life at Albany was. No. But I'm surprised that he is not going to go ahead and go in the draft this year. That's a big win for Mike Norvell and Florida State. But yeah, that's a surprise to me.
Go get your money. All right, this is from I Heart Vols. Do you guys have any interesting souvenirs or memorabilia from your time covering the Vols? Perhaps a game program, photo, autograph. Rob Lewis, I'm sure you have a collection of some sorts over the years.
I have a bunch of press credentials.
I'm
not as sentimental as AP.
I have nothing. I don't have one press credential from all these years. I mean, it doesn't bother me. Like, I mean, like, it doesn't. I keep nothing in terms of that type of stuff.
I do have a game worn jersey, like number 1 that I had Butch sign after his last game.
I have my press credential from the Fiesta Bowl.
As you should.
I have that one tucked away somewhere. When in the spring of 1998, Peyton Manning came to the radio station and did an hour with Mike Keith, and I did get him to sign for my future kids, which is my son now. Obviously, I've got a daughter too, but it's for my son. I got him to sign the Sports Illustrated that has he looks like he's propped up on the cover of the one that his dad was on. That was in the preseason college football edition.
Does it say two boy hubs?
No, it just says Peyton Manning 16 on it. I did get that signature after he was done playing. But that's it. I mean, I've got my picture of John Ward and I sitting in Charlotte at the NCAA tournament, which was his last radio broadcast. The same broadcast that he yelled at me for pulling out a camera. Barry Rice sent me with a camera over to shoot what Barry called the money shot. It was the final sign off for John Ward as the game ended. Now, Tennessee got beat, Rob, by Steve Alford, Southwest Missouri State team by like 34, 35 points. It was some debacle of a game. So Ward was already mad anyway. So there's about 2 minutes left in the game, and I pull this camera out into my lap, and I've got to get it turned on. And I set it there, and Ward looks over and sees the camera and is not a happy camper. And I just looked at him and said, blame Barry Rice, don't blame me. But somebody captured a picture of John and I beside each other, and that hangs in my office. That's not really memorabilia that way, but that's a prized possession I have.
I have nothing from games. I do have Patrick Murphy Racy gave me a nice print of his photo with Eric Berry, like where it's like real close and he's got the eyes. And Eric signed that, real nice personal message to me. But that's about it. Like, I've got
a nice screenshot on my phone when Hubbard calls me of him wearing a toboggan in an open air press box in Lexington, Kentucky. that pops up.
One of those was in Columbia, South Carolina, where someone sent that out in a group text to people. I didn't send it out, but somebody else sent it out of me in a toboggan. That one's floating around out there as well. So, yeah, not the most sentimental group of guys, are we?
I do have a picture of Hubs with the walkie-talkie that finds its way to Twitter every now and again. I had him sign it to me. He wrote, "Your boss, get to work."
All right. Let's move on here. C. Jenkins 512. With Hyagon and Merrill and Callaway both transferring out, it seems as if Squirrel is the only true slot wide receiver. I'm aware Thornton can play both inside and outside. Would he most likely slot inside if something were to happen to Squirrel? But do you think there are any other true slots on the roster right now?
Yeah, Thornton. I mean, like, I get he's a combo, but like when you're a combo, that means you're a slot. And so, Tennessee is very comfortable with him being in the slot. And so, I think that would be the two. And then, we'll see what Tennessee does. Do they put Chaz Nimrod inside? Who do they look to kind of to move around?
Yeah, I mean, could Laycock get some work inside? I mean, here's the thing that you know about the slot receiver position, having seen it the last 2 years. There's not a prototypical Eric, like this guy's measurables has to be
Body
this
type.
to be the slot, right? Velus Jones is very different than Jalen Hyatt, and Squirrel White's very different than Velus Jones and Jalen Hyatt as well. So I mean, you can do it with different body types. So it's not like, okay, it's got to be this certain size guy to be in there. That's why you can slide a guy inside and outside. And if I were a receiver on this roster, Rob Lewis, I would study the slot position night and day, because that's the guy he's the money ball guy, right? He's getting to shoot the money ball all the time. That's the one I would want to learn.
And he's going to get paid the next April, or at least, small sample size, but two guys who, when the year started, and Velus and Jalen Hyatt, I don't know that any of us had Velus pegged for a 3rd round draft pick before the 2021 season, and Hyatt's going to better that.
The point is this is why Tennessee will look to take at least 3 receivers in the 2023 class.
24 class?
24 class, sorry.
And two, the way they used Velus was different from the way they used Jalen Hyatt. So again, they're showing how they can bring out the best of their attributes and put into this offense. So again, I'm with Brent. I mean, if you're a wide receiver, learn how to play slot. One more here from C. Jenkins 512. While understanding the vast importance of the tight end position, do you think that they could run some 4 wide receiver sets this year to get more people involved?
I don't.
I don't think it's part of this offense. You, Brent? I mean, because of the run game.
Yeah, I mean, I think in certain situations, certain down and distances, you might see that a little bit. But when they're playing with tempo and doing what they're doing, they want a tight end on the field all the time, because it changes the way teams defend you, and it allows you to count numbers in the box for the run game. So that you can motion the tight end in a variety of different ways, right, Eric? I mean, if you've got the tight end in line, okay, and they're cramping the box a little bit, but if you motion him out and they empty the box, then you can audible into the run game. Okay, if you've got 4 wide receivers, you can't do that, because you're not going to motion that receiver. You're not motioning Squirrel White inside to block an outside linebacker or a defensive end in the run game. That's why you've got to have the tight end. And that's the thing I've learned about this offense and looking at it closely the last 2 years. The tight end position, whether they catch a lot of balls or they don't, is a vital part of Josh Heupel being able to do what he wants to do offensively with the balance he wants to have with the run game.
The poster also mentions that if you run four wide receiver sets, maybe you shift Brew down to that tight end position on a couple of plays to have that versatility. Again, I understand he lined up on the line of scrimmage one play this year. I understand he was in tight behind the guard a couple of times, but those are schematic gimmicks. That is not that is not the routine, meat and potatoes of this offense. And so I don't see that ever being a possibility with Brew McCoy sliding in, playing that tight end position just to get 4 wide receivers on the field, because then even if you were to do that, then you're taking Brew out of Brew's role. So like, what's the point in my opinion?
Well, I mean, let's slide him down there. Let's let him play a little tight end for a player or two. He's big. He's 220. And he gets down there and he goes against the defensive lineman, and the defensive lineman's, significantly bigger than Brew McCoy. And all of a sudden he gets bent backwards on a play, and all of a sudden he misses 6 weeks. Was it worth it?
Yeah.
Because he's not a tight end.
Doolittle Vol, does Todd Monken get the amount of credit he deserves? Georgia's obviously taking giants. What'd you say?
No, and he should.
Yeah, a giant leaps forward since becoming OC. Will he get a head coaching opportunity in the near future?
I'm surprised he's not gotten a head coaching opportunity to this point. I don't know how hard he's looking. I think he's making between $2 and $2.5 million at Georgia. He's got a drawer full of riches to work with, Rob Lewis, with quarterbacks and the talent that they're recruiting there. I don't know where his desire is to be a head coach. It's become very clear or pretty apparent to me, Rob, that Kirby Smart's gotten out of his way the last 2 years and not had his thumbprint all over that offense the way he did 3 years ago. And I think, Monken's probably pretty happy with his role right now and the money he's making.
I think the money's the biggest thing. I mean, this is not a shot at Alex Kolsch at all. I mean, I think he did a great job here, but I think Monken's in a place where Monken's is to me more of a Brent Venables place, where he's not jumping for South Florida. He's coming off back-to-back national titles. I'm not saying he could get Oklahoma, but he could get. I think he's waiting for a Power 5 job.
Yeah, I mean, why would you, unless you just have a burning desire to be a head coach? Why would you make a move that's potentially a pay cut or put you in a position that all of your money is going to you instead of your staff, and you're not setting yourself up to be successful? So, I mean, I think it would take a big time job for Monken to be looking around, and you just haven't seen his name pop up for any big time jobs to this point. I think he will get more credit this offseason and next year than he's gotten in the past.
Well, I mean, don't take this the wrong. I mean, I've thrown a lot of stones at Stetson Benton over the years, but I'm past that. I'm grudgingly accepted he was a great college quarterback. But I mean, that's not the most talented guy in the world. And Monken just won 2 back-to-back national titles with a former walk-on at quarterback. And again, I just think he's in Brent Venables mode where he can be picky.
Yep.
And their star receivers, Lad McConkey. I mean, I understand there's some toys, great running backs, great tight ends, great offensive line, but the quarterback and the skill, some of those skill positions still, weren't fantastic. This is a good one for Austin. Vol by Grace. Is there a heir apparent to Cooper Mays currently on the roster? Addison Nichols has been mentioned previously. Would the recent offensive line additions give more flexibility to focus Nichols on that role come spring?
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to have to see kind of where he fits. I mean, yeah, maybe at center, maybe at guard. I think John Campbell keeps him from having to play tackle. Because I think Addison Nichols could absolutely play tackle. But I still think his best football is probably at guard. I think that's where he can have the biggest impact. And I think the biggest thing for a guy like Addison Nichols or Messiah Reddick, they've got to come to compete now. Like last year, no one expected them to play. I think it's easy when those kids kind of roll to practice. They know they're not going to play, kind of go through the motions. This spring, you can't go through the motions. This is time to step forward and see if you can help, the program, this coming year. And so I think that both those guys and any of those guys that were a freshman this past fall need to have that similar mindset. As for who's the heir apparent to Cooper Mays, your guess is as good as mine, because I'm not sure that they have one just designated, if that's the case. I think this spring will go a long way to deciding that. But you know what? All last year, you knew if something happened to Cooper and he stayed healthy and played phenomenal, but it had something happen, you're just going to slide Carvin right in there. Carvin's gone. So, who is that backup center to Cooper Mays? I think that's something they start trying to figure out this spring.
Well, and the question, too, is, I mean, maybe it's Jackson Lampley.
Could be.
But he's a veteran. You still got to go find a young guy to start to get ready, right? I mean, you still got to groom one of these young guys who are in their first or second year. You got to try to start to get somebody ready to play that position. I'm with you, Austin. I think that's an intriguing storyline in spring ball.
The same situation as Jackson Lampley. I mean, it might be Jamontez Spraggins. I mean, he's a guy that can snap the football as well. So, I mean, just like Jerome Carvin, worst case scenario, maybe you slide him down. I don't know. That's I'd figure that out because, again, you don't have that safety net anymore, as you guys have pointed out with Jerome Carvin.
I think you can find a veteran short-term fix, right? But I think part of the poster's question is heir apparent for when Cooper is gone. Well, when Cooper is gone, those other guys are going to be gone too, right?
Yep.
So who is the young guy that's going to be the heir apparent?
Well, and the truth of the matter is like I know all fans think that everybody's going to stay forever, and certainly Cooper's technically got 2 years left if he wants it. But I would look at next year as his last year, and if he ends up coming back, he ends up coming back. But that's how I would view it if I'm a coach. If I'm a fan, I'm looking at 2023 being the final year for Cooper Mays. And again, if he ends up coming back for 24, he does. But that's kind of how I would look at it at this point.
Golf Matt 45. Where does Eric Berry rank among all-time greats at UT? Is it 1 Peyton, 2 Reggie White, 3 Eric Berry? Is he top 5, top 10? Says he's born in '88. Help a youngin' out.
I would go
Sprint Hubs.
I was going to say I would go fringe top 5, somewhere between 5 and 10. I mean, what do you got, Hubs? I mean, again, you guys are a little older than I am. I don't even know if I would have him top 5, but I think he's somewhere between that 5 and 10 range. I mean, Doug Adkins, there's a lot of really good players. Hank Laracella, Beatty Feathers. I mean, you can keep rolling back down there in the 40s, 50s, and 60s where there was a lot of big time guys that played here. Johnny Majors, obviously, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rob, that's the case. I mean, we got to put an era on it. I mean, if you're talking about 100 years of football, is Eric Berry in the top 5? No.
Yeah, but But if he played, if he played single wing and was the quarterback like Gene McEvers or George Caffigo was in 1930, he might be the best player.
Yeah,
ever.
that's right.
I mean, I don't know. Johnny's in a little bit. It kind of starts with Doug Atkins for me, but I think Johnny was a different era of football. I mean, Doug was too, but he also played in the '60s and in the NFL. I mean, you can see some color highlights, some of Doug Atkins, on NFL films.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, it's Peyton, Eric Berry, and Doug Atkins. And it sounds sacrilegious. Some people, Reggie White wasn't great for 4 years at Tennessee. He had a great senior year, and there's some great highlights out there, but he wasn't a dominant player for 4 years like Peyton Manning was, or like Eric Berry was. I mean, and I didn't cover those teams in the 90s. I mean, I would. You're talking top 5 of modern football. I mean, Eric Berry's in it for me.
Rob, let's stay with you. Let's go to Volken here. I've been impressed with how much Coach Barnes has been willing to put players on the floor, even though they still have some developing to do in a certain role. Is this something Coach Rick Barnes has grown into, or is it unique to the talent on this particular roster?
It's definitely unique to the talent on this particular roster, because he ain't throwing guys out there to learn on the job. If they don't do it in practice, I can promise you he's not saying, man, Toby Awaka looked like crap on Tuesday in practice, but let's run him out there, see if that was just a fluke, and if he looks better against Arkansas on Wednesday night. He's not doing that. I mean, if the kid is not getting it done on the practice floor, he is not experimenting in games, to answer the question.
Well, and Rob, his bench shrunk a little bit Tuesday night in the Vanderbilt game.
Yep.
when Tennessee wasn't playing.
Jamai Meshack, here's your 5 minutes. Tobey, and with Tobey, I mean, Jamai, he didn't get into it deeply. He was upset with Jamai. With Tobey, I think it was more about Vanderbilt went big. Vanderbilt's big guy Robbins was knocking guys over the court. Rick wanted to go small and make Stackhouse match up with that. And with Josiah being back, he's able to do that now. And that's with Josiah being back, he's going to play small more, and that's going to cost somebody some minutes. And on Tuesday night, it was Tobey.
Going to do a couple more here. What are the draft prospects for the following? Drafted, round, undrafted, etc. Jeremy Banks, Princeton fan, Hendon Hooker with injury, and Cedric Tillman. I think Jeremy Banks will be a day 3 pick to undrafted. Princeton fans likely undrafted. Hendon Hooker is likely day 2. I think Cedric Tillman's day 2. Hendon Hooker day 2 to day 3, and I think Cedric Tillman's day 2. What do y'all think?
I agree with the Cedric Tillman 100%. I think if he'll run well enough, he'll be I think he's second, third round pick. Hendon Hooker, I just think it depends on what a team thinks of him, how he interviews Hubbard. I could see him on day 2, but I could see him following all the way to day 3 just because of the injury, even though it's just an ACL. I mean, everybody comes back from an ACL except for Preston Williams, according to Paul Fortenberry. And then Jeremy Banks, again, I think it depends on, does a team fall in love with him? How does he interview? How does he, all that matters. And then Princeton fan, I agree. I think at some point, though, you're better off to be undrafted and try to make a team going to a team that needs you versus a team that's like, we'll just throw a flyer here, but we're really kind of stacked at that position.
And you can be selective, because most of those guys, if you're a priority undrafted free agent, I mean, you're picking between 4 or 5 teams sometimes, deciding on, okay, which team do I think I can have the best opportunity of making this said squad and all that type of stuff. So I agree with that completely.
Yeah, I don't think Banks and Fant are going to get drafted, Rob. And I guess I'm with you guys on Tillman and Hooker. The quarterback thing's interesting because everybody's looking for somebody, right? They're looking to try to land a diamond in the rough somewhere along the way. Somebody will take a chance, with Hendon Hooker and the injury. But he's certainly going to fall in the draft because of that injury.
Yeah, I mean, he was already I think in a battle. Like, he's a system quarterback. You pile the ACL on top of that, and I think working out for teams was going to be big for Hendon. And I hate. I mean, he's going to get drafted. He's going to get shot, but it's not been a great situation for him at his age. That's going to be a knock on him.
All the Stetson Bennett jokes. Hendon Hooker is right there with them. Last one. It's going to go to Sam Smith, 22-33. With Oscar Tshiebwe having the worst game of his Kentucky career last Saturday against Alabama, will Tennessee take that plan of getting him out covering ball screens? And does Tennessee have the athletes in the post that
Tennessee
Bama
came
had to
up
shut
with
him
that
down?
plan. Go back to Tennessee invented that plan. Go back to last year. Yes. Tennessee will get him the ball screens and make him and try to make him guard. Go back and look at last year. That was the root of why Tennessee had so much success against Kentucky. I can promise you that was their number one bullet point in the game plan last year. And I don't know if Tennessee was the first to come up with it, but I can promise you that was, in talking to people around the program, that was plan A. Number one was to get Oscar Tshiebwe in ball screens and make him defend on defense. That is, and I think everybody's catching on now.
Rob, I know we're about out of time here, but I got to ask you this question. I mean, obviously, Rick Barnes is going to play small against Kentucky. I mean, is Kentucky as bad as it looks like right now? I mean, is it, or is this one of these deals where they're young, they're going to develop, they're going to turn into, they're going to be Kentucky to a degree when it's all said and done, or is this as different as we've seen a Kentucky team with John Calipari, and the upside for this team is not what his previous teams that have struggled in the years have done?
Hubbard, I've not watched as much of them as probably a lot of people. I mean, and when you cover an SEC team, ironically, you don't get to watch a lot of SEC basketball because they play so much at the same time. I get to watch most of that game last night. I got to watch a little bit on Saturday against Alabama. And I've seen Kentucky play, but I haven't studied them intently. But, man, I mean, they just look like a bad team. The chemistry looks terrible. And the reason, Hubbard, I don't think the upside is there like some others is because you've got Shavir Wheeler. I mean, how much basketball has that guy played? I mean, he's not a developing freshman at point guard. You just mentioned Tshiebwe. I mean, he's played a ton of college basketball. I mean, Kason Wallace is new and developing. Ware is new and developing. But the guys who were expected to be the best guys on this team are veterans who have been with Cal for a couple of years. So to me, this one feels different. I mean, they'll play better. I mean, I don't have any doubt about that. But I just don't think they're a good team. Could they
trap game, Rob?
I mean, it might be. I mean, they're obviously talented. The NBA draft will tell you that. I mean, they've got a bunch of guys who are going to get picked, but man, they look like a mess, just a mess. And to me, Hubbard, like I said, the biggest difference is the guys who are expected to be the best players. It's not they don't have an Anthony Davis or a John Wall or DeMarcus Cousins. I mean, they have some older veteran leaders, and it just ain't happening.
I mean, I get what Austin's saying, but like it's still Kentucky, right? Like I don't think anybody's going to overlook Kentucky, especially on your home floor.
Oh, they're not going to. I mean,
yeah.
Tennessee will be ready for sure.
Oscar Tshiebwe, seeing some quotes come out of the post-game press conference of the night, pleading with Cal to say, "Hey, play walk-ons if no one's going to give effort."
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds bad.
Cal was probably pleading with him to guard a ball screen.
All right. We'll end on that one. Tennessee and Kentucky coming up Saturday at noon. This has been the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. For Austin Price, Rob Lewis, Brett Hubbs, I am Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and giving us all those questions. We'll be back with some more podcasts for the Rocky Top Rewind on Sunday, Volquest Podcast on Tuesday, and, of course, another Volquest Mailbag Podcast coming up next Thursday. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody.